There's a lot of interest around West Point, Georgia. The Kia commercial went pretty viral during the Super Bowl and post Super Bowl. Governor Brian Kemp tweeting, quote, "Thanks Kia for highlighting your investment in West Point. Hardworking Georgians and corporate partners like Kia are why Georgia is the #1 state for business." Adweek, though, tweeted, quote, "Celebrating small town America? ? Awesome. But Kia somehow managed to make its ad sound like a funeral dirge. They went for empowering and landed on depressing." I don't really agree with that.
Yeah, that was somebody's perception of, well, first of all, West Point, Georgia, I had never heard of. We talk a lot here about major investments by big corporations, specifically things like auto manufacturing. We talked about it all over the upper Midwest. We've talked about it down in Alabama. And so I'm sitting here watching the Super Bowl, and I'm watching, most of the commercials weren't that cool this year. And then this one hits, and it's like, hey, look at this. Here's a car company who's using their $5 million 30-second or 60-second spot, and what they're doing is they're celebrating the people in this town, and this town that they've anointed, to use the term that we use here, and built this massive factory. And Kia wants the whole country to know that they manufacture their cars in America, which is obviously, something that a lot of people are going to respond well to. But I love the idea that they actually showed the faces of people from that town. It caused me to want to check into it more deeply. So we did an analysis. But yeah, it's funny how in preparation for this segment, I went and did a quick search to do some research about the Kia Motors. And the headline I saw first was from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is the newspaper in Atlanta. It said, "Did Kia Super Bowl commercial insult or celebrate rural Georgians?"
Yeah, we're looking at the exact same one too. I remember seeing that the other day as well.
Yeah, if the person who wrote that thinks that they were insulting rural Georgians, that's because it just fits into the category of something we talk about a lot around here, which is that you just have to understand that reporters are trying to interject their opinions into everything now. And so this story on this market outside of Georgia, it is a tiny little town, but it's inside the very outskirts of the greater Atlanta metro area. Okay, so it's not in Atlanta metro. It's southwest of Atlanta, but it's in the Atlanta combined MSA. What that means is that they'll take a metro area, MSA stands for Metropolitan Statistical Area, and then sometimes they'll open it up even further to pick up the other smaller MSAs that are around it, because Atlanta really does become kind of a sun in a solar system. And so, you have Macon, Georgia to the southeast, you have Augusta to the far east, and then you've got this little town is down to the southwest. And it was just really interesting because the population is very small, but again, when these major cities, the population is obviously denser in the middle, and then it gets looser and looser. It goes from urban to suburban to rural. And then when you have a ring of smaller metros outside there, the population begins to get denser again as it reaches that second tier of metro area. That's where West Point is. Mm-hmm. Kia, obviously thinking enough of that town. Now, what's interesting is you go and research it. You search Kia in West Point, Georgia, and what you see are stories, multiple stories, talking about how Trump's proposed auto tariffs are threatening the Kia plant. All right. I saw of the top 10 stories in Google on the Kia plant, 4 of them were predictions back in July and August of 2018 saying that the plant was threatened. Okay. Now, if Kia was thinking about closing that plant, they wouldn't be putting in the Super Bowl. All right. Instead of there being stories saying, oh, shoot, the reporters at NPR were wrong because there's Trump's proposed tariffs threatened Kia plant. Well, it didn't. The plant didn't close. That story still shows up. Mm-hmm. The story about we were wrong, the plant is still sticking around. So it just goes back to the idea that no matter what you see in news in general, nobody can just report what's going on anymore. And there's so much trying to influence people to the negative on so many things and ignoring the positive. So I love this market. I ran some numbers on some properties there. It's a place that you could buy a single family home for $100,000 in excellent condition. You can generate a yield of more than 7.5%, all right, which is just beautiful. and the appreciation rate in the market is lower than average, but it's been very strong. It's a market that basically you can see where the plant came in, because the market was rising through the 1996 all the way to 2006. It was rising steadily like the rest of the country, and then Kia moved in, and so the market didn't decline. Like the rest of Atlanta took a really, really steep incline and then a painfully sharp decline. Prolonged decline. Didn't affect this market, and that was the Kia plant, I would say, because it basically came in right when the housing crisis was coming about, and I think it held the market, it propped the market up. So I'm not recommending anybody go. I haven't been there yet. I'm not recommending anybody invest there, but I am recommending that if you're from Atlanta and you're thinking about investing and the market's kind of crowded in Atlanta, maybe a little more volatile than you'd like, and you want something a little more calm, stories like this being brought to your attention by, of all things, a Super Bowl ad could actually clue you into something nobody else knows about.
Yeah, what I really did appreciate about the ad as well, Greg, was one thing, right? Like they put the face of this kid and they made it about the city of West Point. I thought that was the coolest thing. They could have thrown some celebrities in there. I mean, Kia has money, right? They could have gone and probably even hired Tom Brady himself to do.
Listen, all Pepsi does. I mean, Pepsi won't even have one cameo now. They've got like 9 celebrities in their commercials, so they're just laying out as much money as they have to. I think Kia did something beautiful here, because it reinforces what you and I talk about every single week, which is you're buying the town. Mm-hmm. Kia feels like they didn't just open a factory. They did their research to determine that this was a place they were going to be able to build quality cars. So that's what I mean when I say that it's ludicrous that somebody would think they were insulting. I think what the person who said they might be insulting the rural Georgians just think that some rube with a cowboy hat is being insulted. That kid likes his hat. Okay? Yeah. That kid likes putting his elbows on the fence, looking out over the landscape. This is just some urban person who thinks that it's an insult to somebody who's rural that they're rural.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So I think this kid was proud as can be, and the town is very proud. And obviously Kia is showing this country that they made an investment in a town and the people in that town, and what could be bad about that?
Absolutely nothing. And if there's any news media that wants to bring any negative attention to it, I would be very interested to see what the objective of the person that's writing about this news and the negative light really has here. So that would be very interesting. And here's the other thing too. Hyundai built a plant in Montgomery, Alabama, which is roughly about 80 miles from the Georgia state line. And then Georgia went to bat and said, hey, we want Kia here. And then Kia ultimately then, as a result of this deal that Ferguson put together, eventually said, you know what, we're going to put our first U.S. plant in West Point, Georgia. So it's a really unique story. If you want to check it out, learn more about it, go to West Point, Georgia, drive around, see what you got, and really get to know the people.